4 years ago, I met Ethan at a friend's open mic night in a dive bar downtown. I was there to support my buddy Jake, who was butchering some acoustic cover of a Radiohead song. Ethan was up next, this lanky guy with messy brown hair and a nervous grin. He stepped on stage, strummed his guitar, and sang this cheesy original song about chasing dreams and drinking too much coffee. It was awful in the best way. Earnest, unpolished, real. I couldn't stop smiling. When he finished, he caught my eye from the stage and winked. I laughed, thinking, who even winks anymore? After his set, he found me at the bar, holding a beer and pretending I wasn't staring. "So, did I totally bomb up there?" he asked, leaning closer. His voice had this warm, gravelly edge like he'd just woken up. I teased him about the coffee lyric, and we ended up talking until the bar closed, about music, bad tattoos, and how we both secretly loved rainy days. By the time we swapped numbers, my cheeks hurt from smiling. I walked home that night, rain, soaking my sneakers, feeling like I'd just met someone who got me. Fast forward a few months, and we were inseparable. Ethan was a sound engineer, always tinkering with equipment or ranting about some obscure band he'd discovered. He wasn't perfect. He'd leave dishes in the sink for days, and his 5-minute naps always turned into hours, but he made me laugh like no one else. We'd spend Sundays sprawled on the couch, arguing over whether pineapple belongs on pizza. It doesn't, fight me. Or binge-watching true crime shows until 2 a.m. He'd wrap his arm around me, and I'd think, this is it, this is home. About a year in, we moved in together. It was this tiny apartment in Southeast Portland, with a view of a brick wall and a balcony barely big enough for 2 chairs. We painted the walls a terrible shade of blue because we thought it'd look artsy. It didn't, but we loved it anyway. We'd sit out there with mismatched mugs. Mine had a chip from when I dropped it during a fight about whose turn. It was to vacuum, sipping coffee and dreaming out loud. Ethan wanted to open a cafe someday, one with live music and walls covered in local art. I'd design the menus, he'd book the bands. It was a silly plan, but it felt so real when we talked about it like we could actually make it happen. We even got a cat, this scruffy orange tabby we named Muffin because Ethan said she looked like one. She'd curl up between us at night, purring like a tiny motor, and I'd lie there, listening to Ethan's steady breathing, thinking I was the luckiest person alive. I mean, sure, we fought sometimes, stupid stuff, like him forgetting to text me when he was out late or me hogging the blankets. But we always made up. He'd flash that goofy grin, pull me into a hug, and say, "You're stuck with me, Mia." And I'd believe him. Looking back, I missed so much. I don't know if I was blind or just didn't want to see it. Ethan was still Ethan, bringing me tacos after a long workday, leaving sticky notes on my laptop with dumb doodles, kissing my forehead when I was stressed about a client. But there were these little things, these moments that didn't quite add up. Like how he started keeping his phone face down all the time, even when we were just watching TV. Or how he'd get this weird, distracted look when I asked about his day, muttering, "Oh, just work stuff," before changing the subject. I remember one night, maybe 6 months ago, we were cooking dinner, spaghetti, because it was cheap and we were terrible at planning groceries. The kitchen smelled like garlic and basil, and I was laughing because Ethan had sauce on his nose. He was telling me about some new coworker, Sarah, who was super chill and knew all about audio mixing. I didn't think much of it then, just nodded, stirred the pot, asked if she was cool. "Yeah, she's great," he said, but his voice was off, like he was trying too hard to sound casual. I brushed it off. I mean, Ethan had work friends before. Why would this be different? But it kept happening. Her name would pop up in stories. Sarah said this, Sarah did that. Once he came home late, saying they'd grabbed drinks with the team after a long project. His hoodie smelled like perfume, but I told myself it was probably someone else at the bar. I wasn't the jealous type. I didn't want to be that person, you know? The one who overanalyzes every little thing, who turns love into a checklist of red flags. So I ignored the knot in my stomach. I told myself I was being paranoid, that Ethan loved me, that we were solid. God, I was so naive. I think what hurts most, looking back, is how perfect it all seemed. Those mornings on the balcony, muffin weaving between our legs, Ethan humming some tune he'd made up. The way he'd grab my hand when we walked to the coffee shop down the street, like he couldn't stand not touching me. I'd look at him, his hazel eyes, that stupid flannel he wore every day, and think, this is forever. I'd built this whole future in my head, one where we'd fight and make up and grow old together. Maybe with a kid or two, still arguing about pizza toppings. I was so sure we were unbreakable. I mean, 4 years isn't nothing. You don't just throw that away, right? You build something brick by brick and you trust it'll hold. That's what I told myself anyway. Every time that knot in my gut got tighter. Every time his phone buzzed at midnight and he'd silence it without looking. Every time he smiled a little too long when he mentioned her name. Until that one night. The night I couldn't ignore it anymore. The night everything I thought I knew about us, about him, turned to ash. I wish I could say that night, the one where everything shattered, was some big dramatic moment that came out of nowhere. But the truth is, it wasn't. The signs were there, piling up like dishes in the sink, and I just kept ignoring them. I wanted to believe in us, in Ethan, in the life we'd built. But looking back, I can see it so clearly now. The cracks. In our perfect little world, spreading wider every day. It started small. So small I barely noticed at first. Ethan's phone used to just be a phone, you know? He'd leave it on the coffee table, screen up, buzzing with group chat memes or his mom texting about her book club. But sometime last fall, that changed. He started keeping it closer, like it was glued to him. I'd be washing dishes, and he'd be on the couch, thumb scrolling, tilting the screen just enough that I couldn't see. Work stuff, he'd mutter if I asked, not looking up. Work stuff. At 11 p.m. on a Saturday. Right. I tried not to let it bug me. I mean, we all have our habits, don't we? I'd get lost in my sketchpad for hours, tweaking designs until my eyes burned, and Ethan never complained. So I told myself to chill, to trust him. But then there were other things, like how he started staying late at the studio more often. Big project, he'd say, tossing his keys on the counter when he got home, his hair messy like he'd been running his hands through it. I'd nod, reheat leftovers, ask how it went. He'd shrug, give me a quick kiss, and say, "Same old. You know how it is." But his smile didn't reach his eyes anymore. And then there was Sarah. God, her name started creeping into everything. At first, it was just little mentions, casual, like she was any other coworker. "Sarah fixed the mixer today, total lifesaver," he'd say over breakfast, or, "Sarah's got this wild story about her old band." I'd laugh, ask a question, not thinking much of it. Ethan always had stories about work, about the chaos of late-night sessions, or some drummer who showed up drunk. But Sarah's name kept coming up, more and more, like a song stuck on repeat. I remember one morning, maybe October, we were at our favorite coffee shop down the street. It was one of those crisp Portland days, leaves crunching under our boots, the air smelling like damp earth and espresso. I was sketching on a napkin, some dumb logo idea, and Ethan was scrolling through his phone, chuckling. "What's so funny?" I asked, leaning over. He pulled the phone back, just a fraction, and said, "Oh, just Sarah. She sent this meme about audio engineers. Total nerd stuff, I smiled, but something twisted in my chest. Why pull the phone away? Why was Sarah texting him on a Sunday morning? I didn't say anything. I sipped my latte, changed the subject, asked if he wanted to hit the farmers market later. But that twist in my chest didn't go away. It was like a splinter, small but impossible to ignore once you knew it was there. I started noticing how he'd light up when he talked about her. Not a lot, but enough. A quick grin, a spark in his voice. He didn't do that when he talked about me anymore. I tried to shake it off. I mean, Ethan was still Ethan, right? He'd still flop onto the couch with me, muffin sprawled across his lap, and we'd watch some terrible reality show, laughing until we couldn't breathe. He'd still leave me. Coffee in the pot when he left early with a sticky note that said, "Don't work too hard, nerd." But those moments felt thinner, somehow. Like we were going through the motions, and I was the only one who noticed. One night, I couldn't hold it in anymore. We were in bed, the room dark except for the streetlight sneaking through the blinds. His phone buzzed on the nightstand, once, twice, 3 times. He reached over, silenced it, rolled back like nothing happened. My heart was pounding, but I kept my voice light. "Who's texting you at midnight?" I asked, half laughing, like it was no big deal. He paused, just a second too long. "Probably just the group chat," he said, yawning. "You know how they get." But he didn't check the phone, didn't show me the screen, just pulled the blanket up and said, "Night, Mia." I lay there, staring at the ceiling, muffins, purring the only sound in the room. Group chat. Sure. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to roll over, snuggle into his side, and forget it. But I couldn't. That splinter was digging deeper, and no amount of sticky notes or coffee runs could pull it out. I started second-guessing everything. Was I being crazy? I'd never been jealous before. Not like this. Ethan had female friends, co-workers, whatever, and it never bothered me. But this felt different. I'd catch myself watching him, looking for clues. The way he'd shove his phone in his pocket when I walked into the room. The way he'd get defensive if I asked about his day, snapping, "It's just work, Mia, why do you care?" Why did I care? Because he was my person, that's why. Because we were supposed to be a team. I talked to my best friend Lena about it one day. We were grabbing brunch at this little spot with the best pancakes in town, syrup dripping onto my plate as I spilled everything. "He's acting weird," I said, poking at my food. "Like he's still sweet, but I don't know. It's the phone thing. And this Sarah girl. Am I losing it?" Lena leaned back, sipping her mimosa, her braids catching the sunlight. "You're not losing it," she said, but her tone was careful. "People get busy, you know. Work's intense for him right now. But..." She trailed off like she didn't want to say it. "But what?" I pressed, my fork frozen midair. She sighed. "If your gut's telling you something's off, don't ignore it. Just keep an eye out, okay? Don't jump to conclusions, but don't play dumb either. Keep an eye out." Great advice, but what was I supposed to do? Follow him to work? Hack his phone? I wasn't that person. I didn't want to be. So I nodded, thanked her, and went home, telling myself I'd let it go. Ethan loved me. He wouldn't hurt me. We were fine, but we weren't. I see that now. The late nights got later. The excuses got flimsier. One time, he came home smelling like cigarettes. Not his brand, not even close, and said he'd been at a bar with the crew. I didn't push it, but I couldn't sleep that night, my mind spinning with questions I was too scared to ask. Then there was the fight. It was a Friday, one of those rainy evenings where the whole city feels like it's underwater. We were supposed to have a date night. Nothing fancy, just takeout and a movie. But Ethan texted me at 6 p.m., saying he had to stay late again. "Clients being a pain," he wrote. "I'll make it up to you." I sat there on the couch, Muffin curled up next to me, staring at the unopened Thai food. Something snapped. When he got home at 10, I was waiting. "Where were you really?" I asked, my voice sharper than I meant it to be. He froze, keys still in his hand. "I told you, Mia. Work." "Until 10? On a Friday?" I stood up, arms crossed. "What client needs you that late?" His jaw tightened. "Why are you interrogating me? I'm busting my ass and you're acting like I'm sneaking around." "Are you?" The words slipped out before I could stop them. He laughed, but it was cold, bitter. "Wow, real nice, Mia. You don't trust me at all, do you?" I wanted to scream that I did trust him, or I used to, but I just stood there, rain pounding the windows, feeling like an idiot. He shook his head, grabbed a beer from the fridge, and went to bed without another word. That fight lingered, like a bruise you keep pressing. We made up, sort of. He hugged me the next morning, said he was sorry for snapping, but it didn't feel right. Nothing did. And deep down, I knew why. I just wasn't ready to face it. Not until that text. The one that broke me. I keep replaying that night in my head, like some movie I can't pause. It was a Tuesday. One of those dreary Portland evenings where the rain doesn't stop, just hammers the windows until you feel trapped inside your own life. I was home early. For once, sprawled on the couch with my laptop, tweaking a logo for a client who kept changing their mind. Muffin was curled up on the armrest, purring like she didn't have a care in the world. Ethan was in the shower, his phone left on the kitchen counter, screen dark. I didn't think anything of it. Not at first. I don't even know why I looked. I wasn't trying to snoop. Honest to God, I wasn't. I'd spent months telling myself to stop overthinking, to stop turning every little thing into a conspiracy. But then it buzzed. Once, twice. The screen lit up, and I glanced over, more out of reflex than anything. Just a notification, I thought. Probably his mom or one of his buddies sending some dumb meme. But the name on the screen stopped me cold. Sarah. The message preview was short, but it was enough. "Miss you already. Last night was amazing." A winking emoji stared back at me, mocking. My stomach dropped. Actually felt like it fell through the floor. I sat there, frozen, the laptop still open on my lap, the rain drumming harder now, louder, like it was trying to drown out my thoughts. Last night. Ethan had told me he was at a work dinner, some networking thing with the studio crew. He'd come home late, maybe 11, smelling faintly of beer, saying he was exhausted and just wanted to crash. I'd kissed him goodnight, hadn't thought twice, and now this. My hands were shaking as I slid the laptop onto the couch. Muffin stirred, blinking at me like she knew something was wrong. I stood up, legs wobbly, and walked to the counter. The phone sat there, innocent, like it wasn't about to ruin everything. I told myself to leave it alone, to wait, to ask him later when I wasn't spiraling. But my fingers moved before my brain could catch up, unlocking the screen. His passcode was still my birthday, which somehow made it worse. The text thread with Sarah opened and I scrolled, my heart pounding so loud I could hear it over the rain. It wasn't just one message. It was months of them. Flirty little jabs at first. Her teasing him about his terrible taste in bands, him calling her a sound nerd. Then it got worse. Heart emojis. Inside jokes I didn't understand. Plans to meet up after work or when Mia's busy. One message from a week ago made my knees buckle. "Can't wait to see you tonight. Just us." He'd replied, with a smiley face and same. I kept scrolling, back further, each message like a knife twisting deeper. There were photos, not anything explicit, thank God, but enough to make me sick. Sarah laughing at some bar, her hair catching the light. Ethan's arm around her in a selfie, his grin wide, the one he used to save for me. Dates lined up with nights he'd told me he was working late or grabbing drinks with the guys. Lies, stacked on lies, going back at least 4 months. I don't know how long I stood there, rain blurring the world outside, my breath hitching. Like I'd forgotten how to exhale. The shower was still running, a distant hum, but it felt like the walls were closing in. I saw flashes of him, Ethan, my Ethan, laughing with her, touching her, telling her things he hadn't told me in months. Had he looked at her the way he used to look at me? Had he whispered the same promises, made her feel like she was his whole world? The worst part wasn't even the texts. It was the memories they dragged up. All those nights I'd waited up, reheating dinner, texting him to see if he was okay. All those times I'd ignored that twist in my gut, telling myself I was paranoid, that he loved me. I'd bought him a new guitar strap for his birthday 2 months ago, spent hours picking it out because I knew he'd love the leather design. Had he been with her that night, smiling at my gift while texting her behind my back? I felt like I was going to throw up. My hands gripped the counter, the cold edge biting into my palms, grounding me just enough to keep me upright. Muffin meowed, hopping onto the counter, nudging my arm like she could fix this. I wished she could. I wished I could rewind, unsee it, unknow it. But there it was, glowing on the screen, undeniable. Ethan was cheating. With Sarah. And I'd been too blind or too stupid to see it. The shower stopped. The sudden silence hit me like a slap, and I realized he'd be out any second. Towel around his waist, probably humming some tune like everything was fine. My heart raced faster, a wild mix of rage and heartbreak tearing me apart. I wanted to scream, to throw the phone at the wall, to curl up and cry until I couldn't feel anything. But I didn't. I just stood there, staring at the screen as it dimmed, Sarah's words burning into me. Last night was amazing. I thought about all the little moments I'd clung to, the coffee he'd leave me, the way he'd pull me close during movie nights, the sticky notes with his messy handwriting. Were they all lies too? Had he been playing me this whole time, splitting his heart between me and her? Or worse, had he stopped loving me altogether and I was just... What? A habit? A placeholder? The bathroom door creaked open and I heard his footsteps, soft on the hardwood. "Mia!" he called, his voice light, like nothing in the world was wrong. "You still working?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. My throat was tight, like if I opened my mouth, all the hurt would spill out and I'd never stop. I set the phone down exactly where it was and turned to face the doorway. My hands were still shaking, but I clenched them into fists, trying to hold myself together. I saw him before he saw me, hair damp, towel loose around his hips, that easy smile I used to love. He looked so normal, so him, and it made me want to scream even more. Then he saw my face. The smile faltered, just for a second, but it was enough. He knew something was off. "Mia, what's wrong?" he asked, stepping closer, his voice softer now, laced with something that wasn't quite worry. Not yet. I picked up the phone again, my fingers steady this time, and held it out. The screen was still unlocked, Sarah's text right there for him to see. "Care to explain this?" I said. My voice was quiet, smaller than I wanted it to be. Like I was begging him to prove me wrong, to make it all some terrible mistake. He stopped moving. His eyes flicked to the phone, then back to me, and I saw it. The flash of panic, the way his jaw tightened. He opened his mouth, closed it again, water dripping from his hair onto the floor. The rain kept falling outside, relentless, filling the silence between us. "Mia," he started, but his voice cracked, and I knew before he said another word. There was no mistake, no explanation that could fix this. My world was falling apart, and he was the one, holding the hammer. I waited for him to step out. I wasn't going to cry, not yet. Ethan stood there, frozen in the doorway, water pooling at his feet. The phone in my hand felt heavier than it should, like it carried every lie he'd told me. The rain battered the windows, a steady roar that matched the storm in my chest. I wanted him to say something, anything, to make it untrue, to pull me back from the edge, but his eyes, wide and darting, told me everything I needed to know before he even opened his mouth. "Mia, it's not," he started, stepping forward, one hand reaching out like he could stop this with a touch. I backed up, shaking my head, the phone still raised between us like a shield. "Don't," I said, sharper now, my voice finding its footing. "Don't lie to me again, Ethan. I saw it, all of it. Sarah, last night, months of it." Each word cut deeper, but I couldn't stop. "Just tell me the truth, for once." He flinched like I'd slapped him. For a second, I thought he'd try to dodge it, spin some story about work or miscommunication. But then his shoulders slumped and he ran a hand through his wet hair, leaving it messier than before. "Okay," he said, so quiet I almost didn't hear him over the rain. "Okay, Mia, I messed up." Messed up. 2 words, like they could sum up the hole he'd just blown through my life. I laughed, a bitter, broken sound that didn't feel like mine. "Messed up? That's what you call this? Sneaking around with her, lying to my face, using our money for what, Ethan? Dates? Drinks? While I'm here, waiting for you like an idiot?" His face crumpled, and he took another step, closing the gap between us. "It wasn't like that," he said, his voice cracking. "It just happened. I didn't plan it, I swear. Sarah and we were just working together, and then what?" I snapped, cutting him off. My hands were trembling again, but I didn't care. "You tripped and fell into her bed? You accidentally sent her heart emojis for months? Come on, Ethan, don't insult me." He winced, looking down at the floor, water dripping onto the hardwood. I noticed stupid things then. The way his towel was slipping, the faint scar on his shoulder from a skateboarding fall years ago, the way Muffin was watching us from the couch, tail twitching. It was surreal, how normal the room looked, how our life was still scattered around us, my sketchbook on the table, his guitar in the corner, while everything inside me was breaking. "I'm sorry," he said finally, his voice thick like he was choking on it. "I didn't mean to hurt you, Mia. I love you. I do. It's just, things got complicated." "Complicated?" I repeated, my voice rising. I couldn't hold it back anymore. "You think this is complicated for you? I trusted you, Ethan. 4 years, and I thought we were..." My throat tightened and I had to stop, swallowing hard. "I thought we were forever. And you're throwing it away for some girl who gets you at work?" "She's not some girl," he said, and the second the words left his mouth, I saw him realize his mistake. His eyes widened, and he backtracked fast. "I mean, it's not about her. It's about me. I was stressed, okay? Work's been insane, and you've been so busy with your designs, and I don't know. I got caught up." I stared at him, my chest heaving, trying to process what he'd just said. "So this is my fault? Because I'm working? Because I'm not what? Fun enough for you anymore?" The hurt was turning into something else now, rage, hot and sharp, burning away the tears I refused to let fall. You don't get to blame me for this. You made a choice. Every text, every lie, every time you left me here to go see her. That was you." He shook his head, desperate now, stepping closer until I could smell the soap on his skin. "I didn't want to lose you, Mia. I still don't. It was a mistake, okay? A stupid, awful mistake. I'll end it. I'll tell Sarah it's over. Stop," I said, my voice low but steady, cutting through his panic. I took a step back, putting the counter between us. "You don't get to make promises now. You don't get to act like this. Is something you can fix with a quick text to her. You broke us, Ethan. You broke me." He went quiet, his hands falling to his sides. For the first time, he looked small, like the guy I'd met at that open mic had vanished, leaving this stranger in his place. "What do you want me to do?" he asked, almost whispering. "Tell me what to do, Mia. I'll do anything." I wanted to scream that there was nothing he could do, that no apology could erase the images in my head. Him laughing with her, kissing her, lying to me while I planned our future. But part of me, the part that still loved him despite everything, wanted to believe he could fix it, that we could go back to Sunday mornings with muffin and coffee, to dreaming about our cafe. That part was loud, begging me to give him a chance, but then I thought of the texts. "Miss you already? Just us." The way he'd smiled at his phone when he thought I wasn't looking. And I knew, deep down, in the part of me that wasn't broken yet, that I couldn't stay. "Not like this." "Get out," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. It didn't sound like me, but it was mine, steady and final. "Pack a bag and leave. I can't look at you right now." His face fell like I'd punched him. "Mia, please," he said, stepping toward me again. "We can talk about this. We can—" "No." I held up a hand, stopping him. "There's nothing to talk about. You made your choice. Now I'm making mine." He stared at me, his eyes searching mine, like he was waiting for me to crack, to take it back. I didn't. I couldn't. Every second he stood there, I saw her name on his screen, felt the weight of every lie he'd told. Finally, he nodded, just once, and turned toward the bedroom. I heard him moving, drawers opening, clothes rustling, the zipper of his duffel bag. Each sound was a nail in the coffin of what we'd been. I sank onto the couch, Muffin climbing into my lap, her warmth the only thing keeping me grounded. The rain hadn't let up, and neither had the ache in my chest. I kept seeing flashes of our life. His guitar picks scattered on the table, the chipped mug he'd bought me at a flea market, the way he'd hum off key while cooking breakfast. How could it all mean nothing now? How could he just walk away from it? He came back out, duffel slung over his shoulder, his face pale under the kitchen light. "I'm going to my brother's," he said, his voice flat. I'll call you tomorrow, okay? We can figure this out." I didn't look at him. I couldn't. "Just go," I said, stroking Muffin's fur, focusing on her purring so I wouldn't fall apart. He hesitated, like he wanted to say more, but then I heard his footsteps, the jingle of his keys, the door opening and closing with a soft click. The apartment went quiet, except for the rain and Muffin's steady breaths. I sat there, staring at the spot where he'd stood. The phone still on the counter, its screen dark now. He was gone. But it wasn't over. Not even close. The silence after Ethan left was deafening. The rain kept pounding outside, but inside it was like the air had been sucked out of the apartment. I sat on the couch, Muffin still curled in my lap, her soft purring the only thing tethering me to reality. The phone lay on the counter where I'd left it, its dark screen staring back like it was daring me to pick it up again. I didn't. I couldn't. Seeing those texts once was enough to burn them into my brain forever. I don't know how long I stayed there, frozen, my fingers tangled in Muffin's fur. Minutes, maybe hours. The Thai food from our ruined date night sat cold on the table, the smell turning my stomach. Everything felt wrong. The couch we'd picked out together, the throw blanket he'd always hog, the guitar leaning against the wall. This was our home, our life, and now it was just mine. Alone. The word hit me like a brick, and for the first time that night, I let myself cry. It wasn't loud or dramatic, not like in movies, just quiet, shaky sobs that left my chest aching and my eyes raw. Muffin nudged my hand, confused, and I hugged her closer, whispering, "It's okay, girl," even though it wasn't. I kept expecting to hear his key in the lock, his voice calling out, "Mia, I'm back." But the door stayed shut, and the silence grew heavier, wrapping around me until I could barely breathe. I didn't sleep that night. I tried dragging myself to bed, but the sheets smelled like him, his stupid cedarwood shampoo, and I ended up on the couch again, wrapped in a hoodie that wasn't his. My mind wouldn't stop. I kept replaying everything, the texts, his excuses, the way he'd looked at me when I told him to leave. Had he ever loved me? Or had I just been convenient? A placeholder while he chased something shinier with Sarah? By morning, the rain had slowed to a drizzle, and I felt like a ghost. My phone buzzed with texts from Lena, our brunch plans. I'd forgotten, but I couldn't face her yet. I couldn't face anyone. I called in sick to work, mumbling some excuse about a stomach bug, and spent the day staring at my sketch pad, pencil in hand, drawing nothing. Every line felt pointless. What was the point of designing logos, building a career, when the person I'd been building it all for was gone? Lena showed up anyway, banging on the door around noon with a paper bag of bagels and coffee. "You look like hell," she said, pushing past me into the apartment. She didn't ask what was wrong, not right away, just plopped onto the couch, handed me a sesame bagel, and waited. That's Lena. She knows when to push and when to sit quiet. I told her everything. The texts, the confrontation, the way he'd just walked out. My voice broke a dozen times, but she listened, nodding, her face shifting from shock to anger to something softer, sadder. When I finished, she leaned forward, her braids swinging, and said, "Mia, you don't deserve this. Not one bit." "I know," I said, but it felt like a lie. Did I know? I kept wondering what I'd done wrong. Had I been too clingy, too focused on work, not exciting enough? Lena must have seen it on my face because she grabbed my hand, squeezing hard. "Stop that," she said. "This isn't on you. He's the one who screwed up, not you. You're allowed to be mad, to hurt, but don't you dare blame yourself." I wanted to believe her. I tried. But the hurt was too big, like it had claws, digging into every thought. We sat there for hours, picking at the bagels, talking until my throat was hoarse. She told me to block his number, to pack his stuff, to take back the damn apartment. I nodded, but I wasn't ready. Not yet. The next few days blurred together. I went back to work, pasting on a smile for clients, but it felt like moving through fog. I'd catch myself staring at my laptop, forgetting what I was doing, or checking my phone for texts that weren't there. Ethan hadn't called, not since he'd left for his brother's. Part of me was relieved, but another part, the stupid, hopeful part, kept waiting for him to beg, to fight for us. He didn't. Then I found the bank statement. I was sorting bills, trying to feel normal, when I saw it. Our joint account, the one we used for groceries and rent. There were charges I didn't recognize. A wine bar downtown, $60 from a month ago. A coffee shop I'd never been to, $12 here, $50 there. A hotel, $180, 2 weeks back, On a night he'd said he was crashing at a friend's after a late session. I sat at the kitchen table, receipts spread out, my hands shaking again. He hadn't just cheated. He'd used our money, my money, to do it. That's when the anger came back, hotter than before. I called Lena, pacing the apartment, ranting until I was out of breath. He took everything, I said, my voice shaking. Our trust, our plans, our savings. Who does that? An asshole, she said flatly. You want me to come over? We can burn his flannels in the alley. I laughed despite myself, the first real laugh in days. Maybe later, I said, but her words stuck. He was an asshole, and I was done letting him take up space in my head. I started small. I packed his stuff, those flannels, his guitar picks, the dumb sci-fi novels he never finished, into boxes and shoved them in the closet. I rearranged the furniture, dragged the couch to a new spot, hung a print I'd always loved but he'd called too loud. I bought new sheets, ones that didn't smell like him, and burned a candle Lena swore would cleanse the bad vibes. It didn't fix the hurt, but it helped. The apartment started feeling like mine again, not ours. I talked to my mom, too, one night over the phone, curled up on the balcony with a glass of wine. She listened, quiet at first, then said, "You're stronger than you think, Mia. You always have been. He doesn't get to define you." Her voice was steady, warm, and for the first time, I let myself cry without shame, the kind of cry that leaves you empty, but lighter. I wasn't okay, not even close. I'd still wake up reaching for him or hear a song we loved and feel my chest cave in. But I was moving, redesigning my portfolio, sketching again, even if the lines were shaky. I took Muffin for walks, her, leash jingling as we wandered Portland's wet streets, and I'd talk to her like she understood. Maybe she did. I thought that was it. The worst was over. I'd survive, rebuild, maybe even forgive him someday. But then, about 2 weeks after he left, there was a knock at the door. I opened it, expecting Lena or a delivery, and my heart stopped. It was Sarah, standing there, in my doorway, looking like she'd rather be anywhere else. I stood in the doorway, my hand frozen on the knob, staring at Sarah like she'd stepped out of a nightmare. She was real, though. Too real. Her dark hair was pulled back, a few strands loose around her face, and she wore a plain gray sweater that made her look smaller than I'd imagined. Her eyes, wide and nervous, flicked from me to the floor like she was afraid to hold my gaze. The rain had stopped, leaving the air damp and heavy, and all I could hear was my own pulse hammering in my ears. "Mia, hi," she said, her voice soft, almost hesitant. I'm Sarah. Can we talk?" My first instinct was to slam the door. Every nerve in my body screamed at me to shut her out, to not let her anywhere near my life. Not after what she'd done. But I didn't move. Something about the way she stood there, hands stuffed in her pockets, shoulders hunched, kept me rooted. She didn't look like the villain I'd built up in my head. She just looked scared. "Why?" I asked, my voice cold, sharper than I meant it to be. "What could you possibly have to say to me?" She flinched, but didn't back away. "I know you hate me," she said, rushing the words like she'd rehearsed them. "And I don't blame you. I need you to hear me out. Please." "It's not what you think," I laughed, a short, bitter sound that echoed in the quiet hallway. "Not what I think?" I saw the texts, Sarah. "Last night was amazing. Miss you already. You and Ethan sneaking around behind my back. What part of that am I getting wrong?" Her face paled, and she bit her lip, glancing down at her boots. "You're Not wrong, she said so quiet I almost didn't hear her. But it's not the whole story. Can I come in? Just for a minute? Every part of me wanted to say no. I wanted to tell her to get lost, to take her excuses and her winking emojis and disappear. But there was something in her eyes. Guilt? Yeah. But also something else. Something that looked a lot like pain. Against my better judgment, I stepped back, holding the door open. 5 minutes, I said. That's it. She nodded, quick and grateful, and slipped inside. Muffin, perched on the couch, lifted her head, eyeing Sarah like she was an intruder. I felt a weird pang of pride. Good cat. Sarah stood awkwardly by the counter, not sitting, not leaning, just hovering like she didn't belong. She didn't. This was my space now, and seeing her in it made my skin crawl. I crossed my arms, leaning against the wall. So, talk. What's this whole story I'm missing? She took a deep breath, her fingers twisting the hem of her sweater. I didn't know about you, she said, the words tumbling out. Not at first. Ethan told me he was single. He said he'd just moved to Portland, that he was starting fresh. I met him at the studio, and he was charming, funny, easy to talk to. I had no idea he had a girlfriend, let alone lived with one. I stared at her, my mouth dry. Single. The word hit like a punch, but I didn't let it show. You're saying you didn't know he was with me? For months? She shook her head, her eyes glistening now. Not until a few weeks ago. We'd been hanging out, yeah. Drinks after work, sometimes more. But he never mentioned you. Never wore a ring. Never talked about home. I thought it was just him, living this bachelor life. Then one night, we were at a bar and he got a text. He turned his phone away, but I saw your name pop up. I asked who you were, and he got all weird, said you were just a friend. But I could tell he was lying. I felt sick, my mind racing back to those late nights, his phone buzzing, his quick excuses. So what? You just kept going? Even after you suspected something? No, she said, her voice firmer now. I pushed him, kept asking questions. He finally admitted he had a girlfriend. You. But he said it was complicated, that you two were drifting apart, that it was basically over. I didn't buy it, not completely, but she trailed off, wiping her eyes. I was stupid. I liked him, and I wanted to believe him. I should have walked away then. I'm so sorry, Mia. Sorry. The same word Ethan had used, like it could, glue the pieces back together. I wanted to hate her, to scream that her apology meant nothing, that she'd still chosen to be part of this. But the way she looked, small, ashamed, her hands shaking, made it harder. She wasn't the monster I'd imagined. She was just human, flawed, like me. How did you find out the truth? I asked, my voice quieter now, though it still shook. She swallowed hard. I overheard him on the phone a couple weeks back, talking to his brother. He mentioned moving in with you, your cat, your life together. That's when I knew he'd lied about everything. I confronted him, and he admitted it all, that you were serious, that he'd been with you for years. I ended it right there, told him I was done. I processed her words, my head spinning. Ethan had lied to her too, not just me. He'd built this whole double life, spinning stories to keep us both in the dark. It didn't erase what she'd done, but it shifted something inside me, like a weight sliding off my shoulders. I wasn't the only one he'd played. Why are you here? I asked finally. Why tell me this now? She met my eyes, steadier this time. Because I owed you the truth. I know I hurt you, even if I didn't mean to, and I couldn't. Just let it sit. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I just thought you deserved to know it wasn't about you. It was him. He's the one who broke things. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to lash out, to tell her she should have known better, that ignorance wasn't an excuse. But another part, a tired, bruised part, felt something else. Not forgiveness, not yet, but a kind of clarity. Ethan was the liar here. He'd manipulated us both, and hating Sarah wouldn't fix what he'd broken. Thanks for telling me, I said at last, my voice flat. But I need you to go now. She nodded like she'd expected it, and moved toward the door. For what it's worth, she said, pausing, you seem strong. Stronger than he deserves. She didn't wait for a reply, just stepped out into the hallway, her footsteps fading as the door clicked shut. I sank onto the couch, Muffin climbing into my lap, her warmth steadying me. The apartment was quiet again, but it felt different now, less suffocating. Sarah's words kept echoing. It wasn't about you. It was him. I didn't know if I believed her, not fully, but it was something. A crack of light in the dark. I wasn't healed. I wasn't even okay. But sitting there, stroking Muffin's fur, I felt a spark of something new. Not hope, not yet, but resolve. Ethan had taken enough. I wasn't going to let him take my future, too. That's when I knew I had to end it for good. Sarah's visit left me rattled, but it also lit something. Inside me, a fire I hadn't felt in weeks. Sitting on the couch with Muffin purring against my chest, I realized I'd been stuck, circling the same hurt, the same questions like a song on repeat. Ethan's lies, Sarah's face, the texts, they'd been holding me hostage, keeping me from moving forward. But I was done. Done waiting for him to fix this. Done hoping for apologies that wouldn't come. It was time to let go. The next morning, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt since that awful night. The apartment was still quiet, the air cool and sharp with the smell of coffee I'd brewed. I sat at the kitchen table, my sketch pad open, but untouched, and stared at my phone. Ethan had texted once since he left, a vague, "Can we talk soon?" that I'd ignored. I'd been too raw then, too afraid of what I'd say, or worse, what I'd forgive. But now, with Sarah's words still lingering, I knew what I had to do. I typed out a message, my fingers steady despite the knot in my chest. Ethan, we're done. Don't call me. Don't text. I'm moving on. I read it over, my thumb hovering over the send button. Part of me wanted to soften it, to add, "I'm sorry," or "I wish things were different," but I didn't. He didn't deserve. My apologies. I hit send, blocked his number, and set the phone down. It felt like dropping a weight I'd been carrying for too long. The days after that were strange, lighter but not easy. I kept expecting him to show up, to bang on the door with excuses or promises. He didn't. Maybe he knew I meant it this time, or maybe he just didn't care enough to try. Either way, the silence was final, and I leaned into it. I needed to rebuild, not just for me, but for the life I wanted, one that didn't hinge on him. I started with the apartment. Those boxes of his stuff, flannels, books, a half-empty bottle of his cologne, had been haunting me from the closet. I called Lena, and she came over with trash bags and a playlist of breakup anthems. We sorted through it all, laughing at his terrible taste in socks, crying a little when I found a photo of us from our first anniversary. Most of it went to donation, but I kept the photo, tucked in a drawer I didn't open often. Not because I wanted him back, but because that moment, us, smiling, clueless, happy, was part of my story too. Lena suggested I move, find a fresh start. I thought about it, but I loved this place. The creaky floors, the tiny balcony, the way Muffin owned every corner. It was mine now, not ours. So I stayed, but I made it new. I painted the walls a soft green, hung fairy lights, bought a rug that Ethan would have hated. I rearranged my art supplies, turned the second bedroom into a studio, and started sketching again. Not for clients, but for me. Messy, bold lines that felt like breathing. Work picked up too. A client loved my latest design, and it led to a bigger project. One that had me buzzing with ideas for the first time in months. I'd stay up late, muffins sprawled on my desk, sketching until my hands cramped. It wasn't just distraction, it was purpose. Proof I was still here, still creating, still me. I leaned on people too. Lena was my rock, dragging me to trivia, nights, or forcing me to try her terrible kombucha obsession. My mom called every Sunday, her voice a steady anchor, reminding me I'd get through this. Even my coworkers noticed a shift, one of them joking I was glowing like post-breakup Beyoncé vibes. I laughed, but it felt good to be seen, to not feel like the girl whose world fell apart. About a month after I sent that text, I made a bigger decision. I'd been avoiding our old haunts, the coffee shop, the bar where we met, because they felt like landmines, ready to pull me back into memories. But one Saturday, I woke up restless, the sun spilling through my window, and decided I was done hiding. I grabbed my sketchbook, leashed Muffin for her carrier, and walked to that coffee shop down the street. The one where Ethan had pulled his phone away, where I'd first felt that splinter of doubt. It looked the same. Wooden tables, chalkboard menu, the hum of espresso machines. I braced myself for a wave of pain, but it didn't come. I ordered a latte, found a corner table, and sketched while Muffin napped in her carrier. A guy at the next table smiled, asked about my drawing. We chatted for a bit, nothing heavy, just easy talk about art and cats. His name was Nate, and when he asked for my number, I gave it to him. Not because I was ready to dive into something new, but because I could. Because I was free to try. That night, I sat on my balcony, Muffin in my lap, the city lights soft, in the distance. I thought about Ethan. Not with anger, not anymore, but with a kind of distance, like he was a chapter I'd finally closed. I didn't hate him, though I'd never forgive him either. He'd hurt me, but he'd also shown me what I wouldn't settle for again. Trust, honesty, someone who'd choose me every day. I deserved that. I always had. I pulled out my phone and opened a blank note, typing out what I'd post if I ever shared this online, like one of those Reddit threads I used to read late at night. I ended it after his affair, I wrote. It broke me, but I'm rebuilding. I'm not fully healed, but I'm free. I imagined the comments, strangers saying I was strong or telling their own stories or just sending virtual hugs. I didn't post it. I didn't need to. Writing it was enough, a way to mark the end of one story and the start of another. Muffin. Stirred, stretching with a yawn, and I smiled, scratching her ears. The air was cool, carrying the faint smell of rain, but the sky was clear, stars peeking through. I wasn't where I wanted to be, not yet. But I was moving, step by step, toward something better, toward me. And for the first time in a long time, that felt like enough. I'm still in Portland, still sketching, still learning to love this new version of myself. Muffin's as bossy as ever, demanding treats like she runs the place. Work's going great. I landed a freelance gig that's got me excited to wake up every day. I've even been on a few dates with Nate, the coffee shop guy. Nothing serious, but he makes me laugh, and that's more than I could have imagined a while back. I heard through a friend that Ethan moved across town, still working at the studio. I don't know if he's with Sarah, and honestly, I don't care. That part of my life feels like a different person's story now. I'm not saying it's all perfect. I still have days where the hurt creeps in, where I wonder why I wasn't enough. But then I look around at my green walls, my art, my cat, and I remember, I'm enough for me. Thanks for listening, whoever you are. If you've been through this, you're stronger than you know. Keep going. You've got this.